Story number 1, Sublet Agreement. I signed the lease on a Tuesday in October, rain drumming against the bay window of the third floor walk up. The landlord, a retired teacher named Glenn, pointed out the mail slots in the entryway downstairs while I initialed each page. He mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that the previous tenant still had some mail forwarded here, even though she'd moved out 6 months ago. I asked if that was normal. He shrugged. People forget to update their address with certain services. I just write return to sender and drop it back in the outgoing slot. It seemed reasonable. I was more concerned with the lease terms, the security deposit timeline, the clause about subletting. I'm meticulous about contracts. It's part of being freelance. Everything in writing. The apartment itself was perfect for my needs. Good light for working, quiet neighbors. Close to the coffee shop where I met clients. I set up my desk facing the window, arranged my equipment, updated my address with the post office and my bank and every subscription service I could think of. The first Tuesday I worked from home, I noticed a smell around 2 in the afternoon. Faint, stale cigarette smoke. I don't smoke. I checked the hallway, thinking maybe someone was smoking near the stairwell, but the smell was stronger inside my apartment than outside. I opened the windows despite the rain and figured it was drifting up from another unit through the old building's vents. By evening, the smell was gone. Thursday afternoon, it came back. Same time, around 2. Same faint staleness, like someone had smoked hours ago, and the scent was just lingering. I walked through each room, sniffing near the vents, near the windows. Nothing made sense. I convinced myself it was something in the walls, old residue from previous tenants. The building was old. These things happened. That evening, I made tea and reached for my favorite mug in the drying rack. It was in a different spot than where I'd left it that morning. Not dramatically different. Just rotated, handle facing the other direction. I stared at it for a long moment, trying to remember if I'd put it there myself, if I'd been distracted, if I'd moved it without thinking. I must have. The following Tuesday, I worked through lunch, barely looking up from a logo revision. When I finally stood to stretch around 3, I noticed my laptop had shifted. The angle was wrong. I always position it precisely. The bottom edge parallel to the desk edge. The screen tilted at exactly the angle I prefer. Now it was crooked, maybe 2 degrees off. The base pulled slightly forward. I live alone. I hadn't touched it since sitting down that morning. I checked the door. Locked. Deadbolt engaged. I checked the windows. Locked. I walked through the apartment slowly, looking for anything else out of place, but everything seemed normal. I told myself I'd bumped the desk, that I'd nudged the laptop with my elbow while reaching for my coffee. But I didn't believe it. Thursday, I left for errands at 1:30, locking the deadbolt and the knob locked both. I was gone for maybe 45 minutes. When I returned, my notebook had been moved from the left side of my desk to the right. My pen was on top of it instead of beside it. And the cigarette smell was there again, fading but present. I stood in the doorway and felt my skin go cold. I checked every lock again. No scratches, no damage, no signs of forced entry. I checked the windows. Still locked. I called Glenn and asked if maintenance had been in my unit. He said no. No reason for them to be there. Was something broken? I said no. Never mind. That weekend, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I researched hidden cameras, read reviews, watched installation videos. On Monday, I ordered a small camera designed to look like a phone charger. It arrived Wednesday. I set it up on the bookshelf with a clear view of my living room and desk. angled so it wouldn't be obvious, plugged into an outlet that looked natural. Thursday morning, I made coffee, opened my laptop, worked for 2 hours. At 1:15, I stood, grabbed my coat, and left. I walked to the coffee shop 6 blocks away, ordered a latte, sat by the window, and watched the rain. I checked my phone obsessively, though the camera didn't have live feed capability. I'd have to review the footage when I returned. I gave it 2 hours exactly. When I unlocked my door at 3:20, the cigarette smell hit me immediately. Stronger than before. Recent. I didn't touch anything. I went straight to the camera, ejected the memory card, plugged it into my laptop. My hands were shaking. The footage started at 1:17, 2 minutes after I'd left. For 8 minutes, nothing. Empty room, still furniture, rain light through the window. At 1:25, the door opened. A woman stepped inside, 40s maybe, thin, wearing a gray jacket and jeans. She didn't look around nervously. She didn't hurry. She walked in like she belonged there, pulled a pack of cigarettes from her pocket, and sat down on my couch. She lit the cigarette and smoked it slowly, staring at my desk. Just staring. At the empty chair where I usually sat. She didn't touch anything at first. She just smoked and watched. After she finished the cigarette, she stood, walked to my desk, and adjusted my laptop, straightened it. Then she went to the kitchen, ran water in the sink, and washed the mug I'd used that morning. She dried it carefully and placed it in the rack, handle facing outward. She walked back to the couch, sat down again, and stayed there for another 30 minutes. Smoking a second cigarette, watching the empty room. At 2:40, she stood, stubbed out the cigarette in a small tin. She returned to her pocket and left. I watched the footage 3 times. I felt sick. I went downstairs to check my mailbox, something I'd been ignoring all week. There were 2 pieces of mail addressed to someone named Caroline Driscoll, forwarded from an address in Eugene. One was a bank statement. The other was a thick envelope from a law office. I opened them both. The bank statement showed an account with $14. The legal envelope contained discharge papers from a psychiatric facility dated 4 months ago, and a restraining order filed against Caroline Driscoll by a landlord in Eugene, citing harassment, trespassing, and erratic behavior. I called Glenn immediately. He came over within 20 minutes. I showed him the footage, the documents. His face went pale. He told me Caroline had moved out in April while he was visiting his daughter in California for 2 weeks. He'd assumed she'd dropped her keys in the mail slot like tenants were supposed to. He'd never followed up. He'd never checked. She'd kept copies. The police came that evening. They took my statement, copied the footage, filed a report. They went to the last known address on the restraining order, but Caroline wasn't there. They changed my locks the next morning and issued a trespass warning. Glenn apologized repeatedly. He offered to reduce my rent. I told him I'd think about it. I still live here. It's been 3 weeks. The locks are new. I check them constantly. I've kept the camera running, though it's never caught anything since. But I can't work from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays anymore. I go to the coffee shop instead, even though it's loud and the Wi-Fi is slow. I keep the camera feed app on my phone, checking it every 20 minutes. Watching my empty apartment on the small screen. Sometimes, I swear I smell cigarette smoke when I open the door in the evening. I walk through every room, sniffing, searching, finding nothing. The smell is never there. Story number 2, courtesy Shuttle. I left the Marriott at 6 in the morning, rolling my suitcase through fog so thick I could barely see the Shuttle pickup lane. 3 days of the pharmaceutical conference had left me hollow. My flight home to Columbus was at 8:30, and I just wanted to sleep in my own bed. The shuttle van materialized out of the gray, the hotel logo crisp on its side. The driver hopped out and opened the rear door, smiling. "Morning, Mr. Kellerman," he said. "Cutting it close with that late checkout yesterday, huh?" I blinked at him, still half asleep. "Yeah." The afternoon sessions ran long. I assumed the front desk had radioed him my information. Hotels do that now, right? Efficiency. I tossed my bag in and climbed into the back row. The van was empty except for me, which seemed odd for a Sunday morning after a major conference, but maybe I was the first pickup. The door slid shut and we pulled away from the curb. The smell hit me immediately. Cherry air freshener, the cheap kind that comes in those little trees, but so strong it made my eyes water. Underneath it, though, was something else. Something organic and wrong. I told myself it was probably just the fog bringing out the smell of the upholstery, maybe mildew from the Atlanta humidity. "Room 412, right?" the driver said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "You were on the concierge level?" "That's right." "Bet you enjoyed the free breakfast up there. I saw you got the omelette both mornings. Western style." I smiled politely, but something in my chest tightened. I hadn't thought about it before, but how would he know that? Maybe he worked multiple positions. Maybe he helped with breakfast service too. Hotels cross-train their staff all the time. The fog pressed against the windows as we merged onto the highway. I couldn't see more than 20 feet ahead. The driver kept up a steady stream of pleasant chatter. "You travel this route pretty often, don't you, Mr. Kellerman? I feel like I've seen your name on the manifest before. Usually every 6 weeks or so." Something like that. I pulled out my phone to check my boarding pass, but there was no signal. Just the spinning wheel. Must be hard on the family. Long trips like that. It's part of the job. The van's heater was on too high. Sweat prickled under my collar. I looked out the window, trying to orient myself. But the fog turned everything into blank white space. We should have been at the airport by now. It was only a 12-minute drive. Then I saw the sign flash past. "Airport exit," with an arrow pointing to the ramp we'd just passed. "Hey," I said, leaning forward. "I think you missed the turn. Taking the faster route," he said. "Trust me, I do this every day." But his voice had changed, flatter. The friendliness had drained out of it. I heard a click, solid and mechanical. I tried the door handle. It didn't move. I tried it again, pulling hard, locked. "What's going on?" I kept my voice steady. "Why are the doors locked?" "Safety feature," he said. "Activates automatically on the highway." That wasn't true. I'd taken hotel shuttles hundreds of times. The doors never locked automatically. My heart was pounding now, but I tried to think rationally. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. I was tired, paranoid from lack of sleep. "I really need to make my flight," I said. "Can you please take me to the airport?" He didn't answer. We stayed on the highway, moving deeper into the fog. The cherry smell was making me nauseous. I could taste it in the back of my throat, and under it, that other smell. Rot. Decay. Something dead. "You live at 4720 Maple Ridge Drive," the driver said. "Columbus, Ohio. Your wife's name is Jennifer. You'll be home by 1 in the afternoon, usually. That's your pattern." Ice flooded my veins. Those details weren't in any hotel record. My home address wasn't on my reservation. My wife's name wasn't anywhere in the system. I looked at the back of his head, really looked at him for the first time. His hair was wrong. Too long for hotel staff. His uniform jacket was slightly too big, the shoulders bunching. This wasn't a hotel employee. "Let me out," I said. "Can't do that, Mr. Kellerman. We're on the highway. Let me out right now." He said nothing. Just kept driving. The speedometer read 65. Trees flickered past in the fog, dark shapes that appeared and vanished. I yanked at the door handle again, throwing my weight against it. Nothing. I tried the window button. Dead. Child locks. Everything controlled from the front. My laptop bag was at my feet. Hard shell case, heavy. I grabbed it and smashed it against the window. The first hit barely cracked it. The second hit spiderwebbed the glass. The third hit shattered it outward, and I felt a sharp pain as glass sliced into my forearm. "Stop the van," I shouted. He accelerated. I cleared the remaining glass with the bag, cutting my hands, not caring. Cold air rushed in. We were approaching a red light. I could see the intersection through the fog. A police cruiser was stopped in the adjacent lane. The van began to slow for the light. I didn't think. I just pushed myself through the window, felt glass tear at my jacket and skin, and dropped onto the pavement. I hit hard, rolled, and scrambled to my feet. Blood ran down my arm. The van's brake lights flared. I ran to the police cruiser and pounded on the passenger window. The officer's face appeared, startled. I was shouting something. I don't remember what. He got out, hand on his weapon, and I pointed at the van. It was already moving, running the red light, disappearing into the fog. The rest happened fast. More police arrived. They took me to the hospital for the cuts. 17 stitches in my forearm. While I was being sewn up, they found the real shuttle driver unconscious in a storage room in the hotel basement. Head injury. He'd been there since sometime the night before. They found the van 3 hours later, abandoned in a warehouse parking lot south of the city. Inside were zip ties, duct tape, a roll of plastic sheeting, and 5 key cards from the hotel. Different rooms, different guests. All from the past 2 weeks. They never found him. The driver, whoever he was. The hotel's security footage showed him stealing the van from the garage at 4 in the morning. But his face was obscured by a baseball cap and the camera angle. I gave my statement 4 times. Described everything I could remember. They asked if I'd noticed anyone watching me during the conference. I hadn't. They asked if I'd been followed before. I didn't know. I flew home that afternoon on a later flight. Jennifer picked me up at the airport in Columbus. I didn't tell her everything. I said there'd been an accident, that I'd cut my arm on a van door. I don't know why I lied. Maybe because saying it out loud would make it too real. But I keep thinking about those other key cards. 5 of them. 5 other guests. I wonder if they're all okay. I wonder if any of them took the shuttle before me and didn't make it to the airport. I wonder how long he'd been watching, learning patterns, waiting. The detective called me last week. They still haven't found him. They don't know who he is or where he went. Just that he's gone. I don't take hotel shuttles anymore. I rent cars now, even though it costs more. And sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night, I check the rearview mirror more than I should, looking for a van that isn't there. Wondering if he's still out there, watching someone else, learning their patterns, waiting for fog thick enough to disappear into. Story number 3, Forest Permit. I arrived at the Thornton Creek Lookout Station a little after 9 in the morning. The sky was low and gray, that thick cascade overcast that makes everything feel muffled. I had the only research permit for this zone. The Forest Service had closed the area to hikers after the rockslide last month, which was exactly why I wanted to be here. Undisturbed soil samples. No foot traffic contaminating the data. The station sat at the top of a steep switchback trail, maybe 40 feet up on its wooden stilts. I was breathing hard by the time I reached the base, that thin mountain air. I never quite got used to it, even after 3 seasons doing fieldwork up here. That is when I saw the boot prints, fresh ones, on the stairs leading up to the platform. I stopped with my hand on the railing and looked at them. The treads were clear, recent. I looked around the clearing, but I was alone. The forest was quiet, except for the wind moving through the Douglas firs. It must have been a ranger, I thought. Someone doing a structure check. They did that sometimes, made sure the old lookouts were not falling apart. Maybe they had come by yesterday evening or early this morning before I got here. I climbed the stairs, counting the prints as I went. There were a lot of them. More than you would expect from someone just checking the door and the foundation. But I told myself it made sense. Maybe they had been thorough. The door was unlocked. I let myself in and started unloading my equipment. The lookout was a single square room with windows on all 4 sides and a catwalk running around the exterior. Sparse. A table, a chair, a cot in the corner. I set up my laptop and GPS unit on the table and pulled out my field notebook. I had been documenting soil recovery patterns in fire-damaged areas. Boring work, mostly. A lot of digging and measuring and logging data. But I liked being alone up here. I liked the quiet. I opened my research blog to update my field notes. I kept the blog public. My advisor said it was good for outreach, for showing taxpayers what their money funded. I posted my schedule, my locations, photos of the sites. I had updated it 2 days ago with my plans for this week. I was scrolling through the last entry when I saw him. A man, standing on the trail below. He was maybe 200 yards down the slope, just standing there in the middle of the path. He was wearing civilian clothes, a dark jacket, jeans. He had binoculars, and they were pointed up at the lookout. Pointed at me. I stepped back from the window. My heart kicked once hard. It is just a hiker, I told myself. Someone who did not see the closure signs. It happens. But the area was closed. The signs were clear, and he was not moving like someone who was lost. He was just standing there, watching. I moved to the north window and looked again. He was still there. Then, as I watched, he lowered the binoculars and started walking up the trail, toward the lookout. His pace was steady, deliberate, not the uncertain pace of someone who had taken a wrong turn. I went to the radio. My hands were shaking a little, and I was annoyed at myself for it. I keyed the transmitter. Ranger Station, this is Thornton Creek Lookout. I have an unauthorized individual approaching my location, requesting assistance, a static. The overcast was hell on radio signals up here. I tried again. Ranger Station, do you copy? More static. Then a broken fragment of a voice, too distorted to make out. I put the radio down and looked out the window again. The man was closer now. Maybe 100 yards. I could see his face. 30s maybe. Clean shaven. He looked ordinary. That was what frightened me. He looked completely ordinary. I locked the door. There was a deadbolt, and I threw it. Then I started dragging my equipment cases across the floor. I stacked them against the door. The largest case was my sample cooler, and I shoved it up against the others. My breathing was too fast. The thin air was not helping. I felt lightheaded. He reached the base of the stairs. I heard his boots on the wooden steps, slow, steady. Counting them in my head, 40 steps to the platform. Then his voice, calm, friendly almost. "Hey, I know you are in there." I did not answer. "I have been following your work," he said. "Your blog. It is really interesting." The metallic taste hit my mouth. Adrenaline fear. I could not swallow it away. "I just want to talk," he said. His footsteps moved across the catwalk. I tracked the sound. He was circling the station, testing the windows. They were all latched. He tried the door handle. It rattled but held. I grabbed the bear spray from my pack. My hands were steadier now. Funny how that works. When it is really happening, your body just does what it needs to do. There was a gap between the window frame and the sill on the east side. Maybe 2 inches. I moved to it and waited. His shadow crossed the window. I heard him lean close. I sprayed through the gap. He made a choked sound and stumbled back. I heard him hit the railing, coughing. Footsteps on the stairs. Fast. Going down, I looked out. He was at the base of the stairs, bent over, hands on his knees. But he did not leave. He just stood there, waiting. I tried the radio again, over and over. Finally, I got through. A ranger named Castillo. I told him everything. He said they were coming. 40 minutes, maybe. I watched the man the whole time. He moved back into the trees but stayed visible. Like he wanted me to see him. Like he wanted me to know he was still there. It took the rangers an hour and 10 minutes to reach me. By then, the man was gone. But his backpack was not. Castillo found it tucked under the stairs. He opened it on the platform while I stood there, still holding the bear spray. Printed pages. My blog. Every entry from the last 3 weeks. My schedule. My locations. Thornton Creek Lookout was highlighted in yellow marker. Today's date. 9 a.m. There were notes in the margins. Handwritten, small, neat script. Usually alone by 9:30. Stays until 4. No cell service above 200 feet. Castillo bagged everything. He asked me questions. I answered them. My voice sounded far away. They walked me down to the trailhead. Castillo said they would find him. He said I did everything right. I have not been back to the lookout. The Forest Service suspended my permit pending the investigation. They have not found him yet. Castillo calls me every few days to update me. No leads. No identification. I took my blog down. But I know it does not matter. He already has everything he needs. I still do not know what he wanted. Maybe that is worse. Not knowing, just knowing that he was there, that he had been planning it. That if I had not seen him on the trail, if I had been looking at my samples instead of my laptop, he would have reached the top of those stairs and I would not have had time to lock the door. I think about that a lot now. How close it was. How many times he might have been watching before I noticed.